The geniuses at Fox Business decided to make a fool of themselves, arguing against Bernie Sanders on the issue of healthcare. Take a look.
Vermont Senator and 2020 presidential candidate Bernie Sanders presented a bit of contradiction at a rally today, saying Americans deserve a choice in health care, but he wants to eliminate all private health insurance. Listen.
The American people are increasingly clear. They want a health care system that guarantees health care to all Americans as a right. They want a health care system which will lower health care costs and save them money.
Joining us right now is Indiana Senator Mike Braun, who is working on the GOP's own health care bill. So, Senator, tell us a little bit about your plan.
Well, you know, I know what Bernie's going to roll out. I think the price tag was like $32 trillion over 10 years. You know, that's not going to fly. That's jumping from the frying pan into the fire when it comes to health care. I've all along agreed that pre-existing conditions need to be covered, no cap on coverage. Kids can stay on the plan until they're 26. Those are good things. Obamacare, when it was crafted, the Affordable Care Act, which should have been called the opposite, was doomed to fail because you had big health care in cahoots with big government, never going to work. So what Bernie's talking about is, I think, closer to what most Americans expect until you say you're going to do it through government. And giving up private insurance across the board, it needs to be fixed. I think that would cause a riot out in the streets.
You think it would cause a riot out in the streets to get rid of private health insurance? A riot out in the streets. How little do you know about this issue? Okay, I'm not kidding when I say there's not a single person who I've talked to about this issue in real life who hasn't brought up a horror story involving private health insurance. Everybody has one. I have one. Mine was there was a lapse in my coverage because they didn't. I have it on auto payment and they didn't auto pay it 1 month for whatever reason, and so there was a lapse in my coverage. Now, thankfully, nothing happened in the gap, but it was a pain in the ass to get on the phone and go through more paperwork and try to figure it out and try to get through it all. That was a pain in the ass, and it was a waste of time that I did not want to waste. And again, what would have happened if in that gap when I didn't have coverage, something happened? I'll tell you what would have happened. Bankruptcy. People go bankrupt from lack of health insurance in this country. So it's one of the top causes of bankruptcy, if not the top cause of bankruptcy, is medical bills. So, and everybody has a horror story like that, and mine is actually rather mild compared to most people. Most people have, you know, I mean, for fuck's sake, they had whole divisions at these health insurance companies, whole departments working on something called rescission. And rescission is the process by which you nullify a contract after the fact by looking for a breach of the terms of service. So, terms of service might not be the right phrase, but the classic example that I spoke about, and we covered it on the show, was this woman had acne, but her health insurance company said, well, no, we're saying those were cancerous skin lesions, that it wasn't acne, it was cancerous skin lesions, and you didn't tell us. Therefore, you didn't tell us you had a pre-existing condition, and we're not going to pay out on your cancer treatment now. And that's the thing, is that the way that they make money in this system is to try to wiggle out of paying for as much care as possible. That's the way you make money in this system. The way you make money in this system is to say, I can't pay out on your claim for reasons X, Y, and Z. I can't pay out on your claim for reasons X, Y, and Z. Oh, look, now I have more money to pad the bottom line and keep my shareholders happy. So this is the problem is the nature of the system. The problem is you have a perverse incentive structure with private health insurance. And this dipshit, the dipshit of all dipshits, is saying, well, Americans will riot. Americans will riot if you get rid of private health. Are you kidding me? What a joke! How out of touch are you? Oh, it's insane how out of touch he is. Now, also, let me just say they lied at the beginning there. Bernie doesn't want to eliminate, quote, all private health insurance, as they say he does. He's fine with supplemental. His bill allows for supplemental. But yeah, beyond supplemental, no. Because they're the problem. They're the root problem of the system. an unnecessary, rapacious, mafia-like for-profit middleman. That's a huge problem. Gigantic problem. Also, they do the price tag fear-mongering. $32 trillion over a decade. Ooh. What they don't tell you is that according to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, if we don't do Medicare for all, our current system would cost $5 trillion more than that. So it net saves money. And then the final thing I'll say is he mentions like, oh yeah, I'm totally for pre-existing conditions being covered. Literally all these, not a single Republican, not one, voted for Obamacare. Not a single one. So that means all of them voted to keep, to allow insurance companies to reject people because of pre-existing conditions. But now, because it's so politically solidified, there's no way they can oppose it without committing career suicide. So they all pretend like they were for it. Well, none of you were. None of you were. Literally none of you. And in fact, the Trump administration right now is involved in a lawsuit to get rid of all of Obamacare, including the protections for pre-existing conditions. So these guys are weaselly liars, man. They'll say that in one breath, and in the next breath, they'll support legislation that gets rid of the protection. So these are slimy scumbags, and it's no surprise that ultimately they have to lie in order to try to make their point. They have to lie to make their point. They have to lie about Bernie. And then also they demonstrate their ignorance of the political landscape by saying something like, there will be riots if you get rid of private health insurance. You're more likely to have giant block parties if we get Medicare for all.